Hello, my name is Alex Torrego. I'm here today with Dr. Dan Guernsey, who is the principal of the Donahue Academy in Ave Maria, Florida. The purpose of my visit is to train the staff and the students in how to incorporate Socratic inquiry into their curriculum. Thank you, Dan.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Today it's my pleasure to introduce you to the Torrego method. This is an exciting process that we've discovered and that we're pleased to share with you today. The method is developed by Mr. Alex Torrego, and there may not be time for him to tell you his whole story. It's available on his book, but he is responsible for developing some of the backbone of voicemail, some of the stuff you use every day. This is the guy who made it happen over a lifetime of successful career. But what he discovered is he was working with some of the most brilliant physicists and engineers around the planet to change it, is he realized that there was a process that they were following that got results and got problems solved. And it's the process he's going to take you through today. And it's a process that you're going to find familiar because it also relates to what we do with your education. We're trying to develop you to become thinkers and problem solvers, right? We want you to think with clarity, accuracy, precision, depth, breadth, logic, fairness. These are the things we're trying to get you to do. So it's not just what you're studying, it's the process of studying that gets to truth. And that's something that we do here and that Mr. Torrego's method also attempts to get at. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the class over to him. Enjoy and learn.
Some of what he said is true. So my name is Alex Torrego, and I'm very, very happy to be here at the invitation of Dr. Guernsey at the Donahue Academy in Ave Maria. I hope all your phones are silenced because we're being videoed. You will be able to use your phones. In fact, I will encourage you to use your phones later on. So thank you for joining me on this journey. As I say, as you know, it's being videoed, so it'll be shared across the internet. So I hope you all look at the camera and smile when it's on, right? So the first thing I want you to do is, in the middle of each desk is a piece of paper. Would each of you please pick one of those pieces of paper? Have you all got a writing implement? Right. All right, look at the board. Complete this sentence. Write those words, thinking matters because, and then finish the sentence. In other words, why does thinking matter? And raise your hand when you're finished. Everybody decided why thinking matters? All right. Now I want you to raise your hands again. Which of these two statements do you agree with? Most problems I will face can be overcome by knowing all of the facts about that problem. How many people think that that is a good statement? How many of you think that most problems I will face can be overcome by using whatever facts I know and by discovering new information to find the best solution? Hands up if you think that's a better solution, a better answer. Of course, of course. How many of you have heard of Socrates? Do you know why he died? Yes?
Some jealous council leaders in Athens decided to put him on trial unfairly and poisoned him.
Yes. No, he poisoned himself, but yes. What he really was doing is he was asking questions, and that's what got him in trouble. Because before Socrates, the only literature was that about the gods, multiple gods, and they were capricious and they were strange, and they gave out really weird advice, and he started to question that. And they said, oh no you don't, here's a cup of poison, drink it, and he did. Now let me ask you another question. How many of you have heard of Carnegie Mellon? Okay. Do you know what Carnegie Mellon is most famous for? I'm sorry? It is a university, okay. It's probably one of the greatest centers of artificial intelligence development in the world right now. And here's the fascinating part. They are sending out recruiters to high schools and middle schools with full scholarships if you can code. So they're going and looking out for coders the way that they go out and look for basketball players or football players or tennis players or golf players. In other words, what does that mean? Coding is really important, right? So they're going out and they're going to recruit the very best that they can at your kind of age, right? I'm going to make a prediction, and my prediction is that in the next few years, universities are going to be sending out recruiters to find people who can think. Because if we go back to this, which statement do you most agree with? Most problems I will face can be overcome by knowing all the facts about a problem. And that's unfortunately what we're doing in the United States right now, is we're just dealing in facts. And facts are not important. Facts are only important in context, in the context of discovering new information based on those facts. So why are we here today? We're here today because of the words that you can see right at the top there. Think, collaborate, solve, communicate. In the early 2000s, the United States Congress, General Electric, IBM, the US Chamber of Commerce, Microsoft, a whole bunch of companies, they came together and they said, something different is happening. It's a technology era and we need to respond to it. And what they came up with was that what we need to do is we need to be able to teach people to think, collaborate, solve, and communicate. So I'm going to share some secrets with you today. And after today, they're not going to be secrets because they're going to be on the internet for everybody to see. And at least that is my hope. I received them from the Salesian Fathers of Don Bosco. This is a very strange coincidence. When I first came down to visit with Dr. Guernsey, I looked at a little statue in his office, and there was a statue of Don Bosco, and 100 years ago, Don Bosco educated me, or his disciples educated me. And I'm going to tell you some stories about that you're going to find extremely interesting. They can change your lives, they change mine. I came from a member of society that was really low on the rung, and as Dr. Guernsey pointed out, I did quite well. And I did quite well because I listened to those priests. But they're only going to matter to you if you constantly practice. So, to begin with, Socrates. What did he do that was so revolutionary? All right? He said, ask a question. He said, answer the question. And then he said, what? Question the answer, right? So you kids are being trained not to question the answer. We give you the answers, you learn them, you memorize them, and then you take a test. Am I right? All right? What you really should be learning is how to listen to that answer, ask the question, how to listen to that answer, and then question the answer. Most people leave that last part out. It's called Socratic inquiry. Some people call it Socratic dialogue. It's the same thing. So ask a question, question the answer, and then repeat and repeat and repeat until you're happy. And we're going to show you how to do that. The second guy is Aristotle. And Aristotle said something that was really interesting. He said, if I'm a person and if all people are mortal, then I'm going to die. And before that, nobody thought like that. They just read something in a book and said, well, the gods in Olympus told us to think this way, so we're going to think this way. And Aristotle said, no, I'm going to find out by using pure logic, right? So I'm going to tell you a story now about Aristotelian or syllogistic logic. So syllogistic logic is used today how? Any ideas? I pointed at you before your hand went up. In a loud voice, please.
If you have two facts, you can use those two facts to come up with something new. For
Right.
instance, if I'm a person and all people are mortal, then I am mortal.
Right.
I'm going to die.
Precisely. So how is that used?
That's used to find out new information from something that doesn't
Okay.
something that you've done.
All right. How do you think these got developed? Right? If two things are true, a third thing must be true. And it's called computer programming. There would be no computer programming if Aristotle had not said that. If he had not come up with syllogistic logic, we would not know how to use a computer. All right? The third person, the third thinker we must learn from is Aquinas, Thomas Aquinas. Always examine an issue from all sides and give all sides equal weight. By the way, going back to syllogistic logic, there's one thing you should understand. You can't say geraniums have leaves, trees have leaves, therefore geraniums are trees, right? Because the first two premises are not related. I am a person, and if all people are mortal, those are two what they call related premises, right? They're both to do with people. So you cannot say geraniums have leaves, trees have leaves, therefore trees and geraniums are the same thing. Now all of these ideas are 2,400 years old. And think about it, these philosophers had no microscopes, they had no telescopes, they used sharpened reeds and pieces of paper or pieces of clay, and the papyrus that they used and the ink that they used was one of the most valuable currencies of its time. Think about that. You don't think of paper as being valuable, you don't think of a pen as being valuable, you probably don't even think about a cell phone as being that valuable. But back then, these men came up with these ideas, living in a society with almost no books, certainly where you couldn't really get your hands on much paper and ink, but yet they came up with ideas that revolutionized the world. And I think, to use a word that you guys understand, I think that's really cool, right? They really revolutionized things just sitting in a room and thinking and asking questions. Oh, by the way, with the Aquinas, always examine an issue from all sides, give all sides equal weight until one is proved right. And this is called thesis and antithesis. When you get to college, this is really going to help you. When you get into life, it really will help you. So all of these are facets of thinking. Thinking is what they all have in common. How important is thinking? Well, Aristotle said that a person is a thing which thinks. The fact that you can think differentiates you from everything else. Descartes said, we are thinking things. Everybody know who Descartes was? Yeah.
He was a philosopher and a mathematician.
And in the Enlightenment era, right? Yes, in France. So, in the earthly sense, not in the religious sense, but in the earthly sense, thinking is who we are. It differentiates us. Now, here we are. Most students do not enjoy memorizing facts and being quizzed. Who agrees with that? Right? I'm going to tell you some stories later. That never happened to me. I was never asked to memorize things and get quizzed. Most students enjoyed discovering new ideas, yes? Here's why you don't like being quizzed, right? It's called convergent thinking. And convergent thinking means I'm happy with what I know. These are the facts. Somebody else found out these facts. I didn't find out, but they make sense to me, so I'm not going to go any further, all right? Making discoveries, however, is called divergent thinking. And divergent thinking is finding multiple answers to the same question. Which is most important to a potential employee?
Divergent thinking.
Divergent thinking is the most important thing for employers, absolutely, all right? So look at this, read this statement. We need to be realistic. In this new era, no one will hire or promote you because of what you know. Google already knows everything or will soon. That is a vice president of Google Human Resources talking. Nobody's going to hire you because of what you know. What does that mean? What is the obvious inference from this? Any ideas?
Well, the point isn't that you know everything, it's that you know what to do with what
That's a good one. You need to know what to do with the facts, okay? But the real reason, when I was employing lots and lots of people, what I wanted them to do was I wanted them to discover things. So you will get hired, you will get promoted very much more rapidly if you know how to discover things rather than if you can just simply repeat things, right? Because Google already knows them, and now we've got voice recognition, right? And before very long, we're going to have thought recognition. So you're just going to have to be able to say, let me think, what is the chemical symbol for lead? And it will come to you, right? So memorization has been outsourced to technology. You are on the edge of something really interesting. I don't want to scare you. I want you to feel appetized. I want you to feel enthused about the future. Also, being able to discover things rather than just simply recover things is very important in your social life, your personal life, your religious life, your philosophical life. You really don't care so much about facts. What you want to care about is an opinion. If you can make new discoveries using facts and thinking up new ideas, you will be happier and you will be more productive. I certainly was. So all of this that I've said so far is talking about thinking. Fortunately, you were born able to think. I find it really amazing that you can go to a 4-year-old child and you can say to that 4-year-old child, imagine a pink elephant, and they can. That is stunning. That is absolutely stunning. But as you know, things are changing. Things are changing exponentially. Automation is radically changing the workplace. Yesterday, Amazon opened a store in Seattle with no checkout people. You take a picture of a product, you put the product in the basket, you take a picture of it again as you go out and you've paid for it, right? So thousands, tens of thousands of checkout people who rely on a paycheck for checking out, for checking people out of a store are going to lose their jobs, right? So I invented a product, I was a co-inventor of a product that put a lot of receptionists out of work, right? Because of the product that I built. And I've felt bad about it ever since. But it really is changing. The world that you're going into is really, really changing. And it's already changed your social life, right? You don't know what it's like not to have social media and so on. Is that a problem? No. Major opportunity, and that's what we're going to get into right now. I'm going to show you how to think, collaborate, solve, communicate. Think about those 4 things for a moment. You are going to be paid to think in a group, to solve a problem, to come up with new ideas, and then to clearly communicate it. And I'm going to show you how to do that in the next 20 minutes or so. These are the life skills that you're really going to need, and that's why you're here today, to learn them. And let me start by this observation. You're a curious lot. Well, what does that mean? How many meanings does it have? Are you all odd, or are you just inquisitive? Curious can mean both things, right? Both could be correct. How do you find out? This is the key. How do you find out what an ambiguous statement means? And you look for its context. If you take nothing away from today, remember that word, context. If you are, or your parents want to drive from A to B and they get the phone out, do they look locally or do they look at the relationship between where they are and where they're going first?
Usually they look at the big picture.
The big picture. You look at the big picture first, right? If you're driving from here to Tampa, what's the first thing you do? You zoom out on the map, right? So zooming out is really, 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 really important. All right? What's that? It's a hot air balloon. All right? So in 1783, 2 brothers invented this. So they stoked up some charcoal and they heated up the air and they went up and took people for rides. So it was an amusement idea to begin with. What else was happening in 1783 in France? There was a war going on, right? So you had people fighting. So what did somebody do? They said, oh, if we go up in a balloon, we can look over that hill and we can see where the enemy forces are. Do you think that was a big advantage? Do you think it was a huge advantage? Now you can plan your tactics, right? So just think about this for a moment. Let me put it another way. So a general says to somebody, go climb that tree and see if you can use a telescope and you can see the enemy. That's really useful information, yeah? That's intelligence that any army officer is going to want to know. Imagine you can go up 3,000 feet all of a sudden. Then the context of the battlefield becomes important. So here's another example of context. There's a nobleman in England in the medieval era, and he's walking across the top of a quarry. And he looks down into the quarry, and there are 3 men down there, each with a hammer. And he says to one of them, what are you doing? And he said, I'm cutting stone. And he said to the second one, what are you doing? And he said, I'm cutting stone. And he said to the third one, what are you doing? And he said, I'm building a cathedral. That person is going to get promoted, right? Because he's figured out he's part of a big picture, right? And how do you figure out you're part of a big picture? By context. Take the word rose. So you can see how I'm really trying to get you to understand that context is important. What does that word mean? You have no idea. It might mean the rose-scented perfume. It might mean the red rose won the prize. It might mean she used rose-colored paint. It might mean he rose to the top of his profession. Or it might mean prices rose higher than wages. What do you call it when prices rise higher than wages? Inflation. Very good. So do you get the idea about contextual thinking? I hope so. So facts are very important. Don't let me diminish the value of facts. Okay? But what is a fact? It's the right answer to an objective question, right? If I say to you, what is 1 and 1, there's an objective answer that is provable. It's true in Hong Kong, it's true in Tampa, it's true everywhere, right? It's a fact that historically somebody proved that to be true. You already know it because somebody did the work, right? It's called objective because it's settled. It's, in fact, philosophers call it immortal. It is now a fact that is settled for immortality. What is the opposite of a fact? Anybody?
An opinion.
An opinion. Ah, give this man a round of applause, right? The opposite of a fact is not fiction. The opposite of a fact is your taste. It's your opinion. It's your point of view. So if somebody says to you, is that the right house to buy? You don't know. It may or may not be the right house for you to buy. You will know eventually, but you can do some things to make sure that that is the right house by thinking about it, by using facts, and by forming an opinion. That was brilliant. Thank you so much. So happy you came out with that. Now this is really important. Why? Because the vast majority of what you will have to deal with in your life is not facts. The vast majority of what you will have to deal with in your life is subjective. There is no right or wrong answer, right? Is that the right house? Is that the right college? Is that the right husband? Is that the right wife? Is that the right neighborhood? Is that the right car? Is that the right insurance policy? You're going to have to deal with all of those things, but it's really important that you use facts, but it's also important that you then add to those facts with your own information and come up with an opinion about what is by definition a subjective issue. So, since there is no correct answer to a subjective issue, an opinion or a point of view needs to be discovered and it needs to be disclosed. If you're sitting on an island and you come up with the greatest opinion of all time, does it have any real value? No, because you're alone. You need to be able to disclose it. And the more well thought it is, the better. It's a very valuable skill. How is this done? It's called, in business, when you get into business, if you go into business, it's called ideation. It's the process of coming up with an idea, right? And we do this by thought experiments. So, the man that's most famous for thought experiments is Einstein. So, did he go ahead and raise a lot of money and build a machine and fire himself at 186,000 miles per second on the beam of light to figure out what was going on around him? Did he? No. What did he do? He thought about it. He conducted a thought experiment, right? When Stephen Hawking decided that there were black holes, did he build a machine to create black holes or go into space to discover one? No. He thought about it. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you how to conduct thought experiments. And there are two things that you need to be able to do. First of all, context, which I've already showed you. The second one is Socratic inquiry, deep questioning. And learning discovery is one purpose of this seminar. So as I said, most ideas need to be shared or disclosed in order to have value, which brings us to substance and style. So if you're told or asked to write an essay, there are two components to that essay. There's the message, and then there's the English language, yeah? Which is more important? The message, without question. A well thought out, authentic opinion with an average writing style is better than a beautiful piece of prose with no thoughtful message. The recipient of the document will know immediately whether he or she is reading something authentic. It may be beautiful, it may be a haiku poem, but if it doesn't have anything to say, it has almost no value. So you need to be able to clearly and unambiguously disclose an authentic opinion on any subjective issue. Why? Because you are the subject of the essay. Every time you type a document, which is an essay that you are writing, and you're sending it to somebody else for their opinion, right? What you're really doing is you're showing who you are. The subject might be anything. The subject might be mathematics, it might be philosophy, but when you are talking via writing or speaking to someone else, what you're really doing is you're portraying yourself just as accurately as a mirror will portray you. So mastering the discovery and disclosure is at the heart of critical writing. I've spent the last whatever time it has been, and that is what it comes down to. Mastering discovery, finding out your opinion, disclosing that opinion is at the heart of critical writing. Being able to think your way to an authentic opinion and being able to write and communicate that opinion clearly is the most important skill for your life and career. And it's all about deep questioning. Deep questioning reveals the context, it reveals the truth, it allows you to buy in, because believe me, if somebody's reading one of your essays, they also know whether you really bought into that idea. That's going to come through. And that may be somebody who is grading your essay for SAT, it may be somebody that's looking at your essay for college application, or it may be a boss about to promote you later in life. They will know whether you bought into what you're saying. And deep questioning makes you complicit in your own learning, right? Just learning facts makes you not complicit. As I said, deep questioning uncovers your authentic opinion, and it shows you how to conduct thought experiments, and deep questioning is divergent thinking. Really master that skill. And some of the greatest discoveries began with this question. Any idea what's coming up next? Close. What if, right? All the great people said, what if? Descartes said, what if I don't believe anything that I can't prove? And he started from there. What happens? So they all said, what if? So, what is thinking? Have you ever stopped thinking in your entire life, do you think? No. No. Nobody can stop thinking, right? Nobody can. But that's what you're going to get paid to do. A machine is going to do the fact stuff, right? You're going to do the thinking stuff. And that's why I'm here today. So thinking for a living has replaced working for a living. Information or data is doubling every 18 months, right? So IBM just recently said, when the Internet of Things gets going, now the Internet of Things is the refrigerator talks to the electricity company, which talks to the grocery store, etc. When all of those things, 90 billion sensors are going to be in the world in the next 5 or 6 years. And when they start talking to each other, data is going to start doubling every 12 hours, right? So how on earth do you make sense of that? Well, computers are going to help, but you're going to have to learn how to think about that. When you were in the first grade, the human genome was just basically a mystery. Now you can make a phone call, get online, spit in a tube, and you can find out who you are, right? That's happened like that, right? Drones were a sci-fi dream to your parents. Now they fly all over. 3D printing, if you haven't looked at 3D printing, have a look at 3D printing. It's affecting absolutely everything. In the next 10 years, we will understand the brain, and we will use quantum computers that are 100 million times faster, and they're going to be hack-proof. Right now, you think of it as, wow, what a great appliance. It does so much for me. In 10 years, it's going to be worth only the rare materials that can be salvaged from it, right? The quantum computer is going to come along, and you're going to be using a device, and it may even be implanted in you. You're going to be using a device that's 100 million times faster than this iPhone, right? That's the world in which you will be living. And oh, by the way, the communications will be quantum also, and quantum communications is hack-proof. So you'll be living in a world where you have these massively powerful machines, and only you can access them. So, Learn how to contribute to your employee and yourself by learning how to think critically. Learn how to use facts to create new knowledge. If that's the case, then we need to examine thinking. So now I'm going to show you exactly a method for doing this, right? And let me just tell you right up front that the most important skill, short of thinking, is your ability to collaborate. When you get into your career, your ability to work with other people will be almost as important as your ability to think. All right? So if you ask the CEO of IBM, she will tell you that their number one asset is not patents that they filed, it's not intellectual property, it's their teams. They know how to work in teams. And I'm going to show you today how to work in teams. So the question is a subjective one. Why does thinking matter? Right? Every one of you could come out with a different reason why thinking matters, and they would all be right. Yeah? So the first thing you do is, and you'll be forming into teams, and you'll be doing this, so follow along. You put the word in the middle. And the reason that you put the word in the middle is that you're going to be looking what belongs up here as well as what belongs down here. In other words, you're going to be putting it into context. And the way you do it is, first of all, you define it. Rule number one, don't fluctuate from this, don't deviate from this. Rule number one, define it. What is thinking? Well, thinking is using logical reason to make judgment. What is thinking a part of? We're now going up, we're zooming out. Well, it's part of our human mental and physical makeup. Well, what's that part of? It's part of us, Homo sapiens. We were the ones that wound up with a 1400cc cranium, right? None of the other great apes got it. We got it. God gave it to us. It allowed us to make tools. It allowed us to invent language, all of those kinds of things. Well, what is that part of? Any idea? What is Homo sapiens a part of? Stardust. All the molecules in the star exist in your body. All the molecules in your body exist in the stars. So now what we do is we start to get a bit closer to it, right? What are other ways to define thinking? Well, let's look at synonyms. Pondering, reflecting, reasoning, daydreaming. What are the antonyms? Always look at what it is not. Antonyms are irrational behavior, thoughtless behavior. What are the other kinds of thinking? Well, there's meditation, there's prayer, there's influence of drugs, there's thinking with people who are mentally impaired. So now, when you wrote down on that piece of paper at the beginning, and I said to you, why does thinking matter? Do you think already you might be getting some inkling as to why you'd be able to write a better thesis statement based on just what I've done right now? Yeah? Okay. So now what you do, and this is what you're going to do in an exercise, you ask questions. And you ask questions beginning with the words who, what, why, where, when, and how. Okay? Who, what, why, where, and how. Remember that. Remember that. If you take that into your college career and into your business career or whatever, teaching career, whatever it is you're going to do, those are going to be really, really important ideas for you. All right? So now what we do is we have this already in the middle. Okay, so we've zoomed in and we've figured out all this stuff here. Now what we do is we start asking questions and answering them, beginning with who? Who thinks? Everyone, all the time. Who invented thinking? We have no idea. It just evolved over time. Who are some well-known thinkers? Einstein, Socrates, Newton. I just put down Zuckerberg, but I'm no longer so sure about Zuckerberg because I don't think he's really running that company very well. But anyway, that's just my idea. What different kinds of thinking are there? Now there's critical thinking, there's high order thinking, there's low order thinking, there's active thinking, there's passive thinking, there's creative thinking, there's problem solving, there's thought experiments, altered thinking, psychotic thinking, thinking about thinking. Anybody know what the word for that is? If there were a test at the end, and there's not, it's metacognition. We have the ability to think about thinking. Very, very interesting ability. And then there's another kind of thinking called intuition. Did you know that all the greatest philosophers and scientists relied heavily on intuition? You just know something is right. Okay? What makes us think? internal and external stimulus. That's the only reason we think. Why do we think? We can't help it, because we choose. Why is thinking important? Because using it, we can overcome obstacles, we can move forward, we can navigate into the unknown by using the known. Thinking equals jobs. I hope I've proved that to you. And thinking is what makes us human. Where do we think? Where the brain and mind converge. Anywhere, everywhere. When do we think? When we're awake, when we can't stop. And dreaming, for all we know, might be thinking. How do we think? Well, it's an electrochemical process. We can think in abstractions. We can think about concrete things. We can even think about things that do not exist. And we can stand outside ourselves and think about ourselves thinking, which is absolutely stunning. So this method of thinking in a disciplined and structured way on subjective topics such as beauty or truth or justice or the impact of evil on society is all called thinking around the box. It first helps students recover information they already had and perhaps did not realize. Then it helps them add to that knowledge, and finally helps them blend two to synthesize a cogent, whole, authentic view. And remember, the subject of thinking, when you disclose it to somebody else, is a picture you're giving them of you. So I hope you now all saw the process. The first thing we did was we put it in a circle in the middle, and we figured out what thinking was. What are all the different parts of thinking? We figured out what a definition was. We found out what the synonyms were and the antonyms, right? Then what we did was we asked and answered a whole bunch of questions beginning with who, what, why, where, when, and how. The next thing, all you do is you vote. Which are the most important ones? This is where teamwork comes in. So the team gets together, they huddle, and they look at all the answers they've come up with, and you can do this very quickly, and you highlight all of the ones that you think were the most important, and then you vote on them. And then what you do is you list them. Now, could anybody make a paragraph out of that? Just adding some words here and there? You think it would be relatively simple to do? Right? Which grade are you guys? This is what some kids came up with that were in, I believe, 7th grade. So take a moment and read that. Right. So, we all read it? So that's what the method does. It allows a team to take a subjective issue, whatever it is, to which there is no right or wrong answer, and it allows you to analyze it, really deeply question it, look at its context, come up with some really good answers, and then take those answers and turn them into a very good, authentic thesis statement such as this one. Now, it's your turn.